Imagine leaving land untouched for years, only to return and find a full neighborhood standing where your trees once grew, and strangers telling you that you're the criminal. My name isn't Dakota Flint. Call me Evan Calder. Different name, different life, same nightmare. I was 45 when this started, a civil systems engineer with a quiet routine and more stress than sleep. What made me special wasn't money or influence. It was inheritance. My grandfather left me 39 acres of mountain woodland outside Redstone Valley, fully paid off, clean title, no liens. He bought it back in 1974 for $9,600, cash, and kept records like a man who trusted paper more than people. I didn't visit the land for nearly 4 years. A separation, 2 kids in graduate school, 80-hour workweeks, life happened. Still, every single May, I paid property taxes, about $5,900 a year. On time, digitally, receipts archived. I thought that was enough. In September 2023, I finally drove up to scatter my grandfather's ashes. I turned off Route 19 onto what used to be a dirt access road, and my chest locked up. The forest was gone, not thinned, not logged. Gone. In its place stood 82 modern homes, paved streets, solar lamps, families unloading couches from moving trucks. A stone sign announced Summit Grove Estates, a Halden Communities project. I checked my GPS 3 times. Same coordinates, same parcel boundaries. This was my land. At the security gate, a guard blocked my truck. Residents only. I own this property, I said, holding up the deed on my phone. He laughed. Sure you do. Turn around. That's when a black luxury SUV rolled in. Out stepped Marla Halden, early 50s, designer sunglasses, posture of someone used to winning arguments without raising her voice. She didn't even look at me at first. Asked the guard what the issue was like I wasn't standing there. When she finally did look at me, she smiled thinly. Told me her lawyers confirmed the land had been abandoned. Claimed adverse possession. Said every home had already sold for around $520,000 each. Said I was trespassing. Then she photographed my license plate and warned me not to cause problems. I drove away shaking, but not confused. Because the moment she said abandoned, I knew she'd made a mistake. And that mistake, the one she thought no one would notice, was about to cost her far more than land. When someone tells you your own land was abandoned, the truth isn't loud, but it's deadly quiet, sitting in paperwork they hoped you'd never open. That night, I spread everything across my kitchen table. Deeds, survey maps, tax confirmations, my grandfather's handwritten ledgers, brittle pages smelling like dust and oil. He'd written notes in the margins, fence repairs, boundary checks, even weather patterns. The kind of man who assumed someday someone might lie, and someone had. Adverse possession doesn't work the way Marla claimed, not where this land sits. You don't just say a property is abandoned and take it. You have to occupy it openly, continuously for nearly 2 decades, and you must pay the property taxes during that entire time. I had paid them, every year, without fail. That alone shattered her story. 2 days later, I called the attorney listed on the subdivision paperwork, Graham Pollard. His receptionist had that polished tone people use when they're trained to say no politely. When I gave my name, there was a pause. Oh, yes. Mr. Pollard expected your call. She offered me a nuisance settlement. $20,000 if I'd sign a quitclaim deed by the end of the week. No admission, no explanation, just walk away. $20,000 for land conservatively valued at $3.8 million. A quitclaim deed is legal surrender without acknowledgement of truth. It's what people sign when they're scared, broke, or uninformed. My divorce lawyer once told me, never sign one unless you're abandoning something worthless. I told the receptionist I'd see them in court and hung up. That's when reality hit. I didn't need a friendly lawyer. I needed someone who scared other lawyers. A colleague from Wyoming gave me a name, Rachel Lynn, a property litigator known for dismantling land grab schemes so thoroughly that insurers quietly paid settlements just to make her stop. Her consultation fee was $600. I put it on a credit card and hoped my truck would survive another month. Her office smelled like leather and lemon polish. She listened without interrupting, flipping through my documents with calm precision. When she reached the tax receipts, her expression changed, not surprise, but certainty. "They're bluffing," she said, "and they know it." Then she said something I didn't expect. "Don't stop them." I stared at her. "They're building on my land." "Yes," she replied. "Let them finish." She explained it slowly. If we stopped construction now, the developer would declare bankruptcy, and my land would be trapped in years of lawsuits involving banks, buyers, insurers, everyone but the people who caused it. "But if I waited, they won't just owe you land," she said. "They'll owe you houses." And the moment I agreed to wait was the moment this stopped being a property dispute and became a trap they were walking into willingly. Waiting sounds passive, until you realize patience can be the sharpest weapon in the room. I signed Rachel's retainer the same day. The number made my stomach tighten, but her confidence didn't waver. Before I left, she gave me 3 rules. Don't contact the developer, don't post anything online, and don't warn anyone. In property cases, she said, surprise is leverage, so I waited. Construction at Summit Grove accelerated. I drove past twice a week, parking legally on a county road with my phone recording. Framing crews swarmed like insects. Concrete trucks lined up at dawn. Every visit, I took time-stamped photos, roofs going on, driveways poured, landscaping installed. Proof stacking up quietly. By the 3rd week, Marla Halden noticed me. I saw her across the site, phone pressed to her ear, pointing in my direction like I was a hazard sign. 20 minutes later, a patrol SUV pulled up behind me. Deputy Ian Morales, early 30s, uncomfortable stance, asked for my license. "She says you're harassing her," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm documenting construction on land I own," I replied. "Check county parcel records. Owner Evan Calder. He ran my plates. When he came back, his jaw was tight." "This is a civil dispute," he said carefully, "but she's filed a complaint. If she calls again claiming threats, I'll have to act." Translation was clear. She had influence. I didn't. I thanked him and kept filming. By early December, families started moving in. U-Haul trucks blocked cul-de-sacs. Kids rode scooters over brand-new asphalt. I watched a couple carry a crib into a pale gray house near the entrance. Another family planted a sapling in their yard, patting soil around roots like they'd be there forever. That was the hardest part. These weren't villains. They were people who trusted paperwork and believed the system worked. The guilt sat heavy, but Rachel had been clear. "They're victims too," she told me. "But if you flinch now, the real criminals walk." The pressure escalated fast. A certified letter arrived warning me to stop trespassing. Inside was a photo of my truck, license plate circled in red marker. Handwritten note in the margin, "Document everything." When I showed Rachel, she laughed, not kindly, but with satisfaction. "They're doing our job for us," she said. "Every threat proves they knew there was a dispute and kept building anyway." Then came the false report. County Code Enforcement called, claiming I was running an illegal dumping site on the property. Fines starting at $600 per day. The inspector arrived, walked the perimeter, found nothing because there was nothing. Off the record, he leaned in. "This developer does this everywhere," he said. "Complaints, pressure, intimidation. It's a pattern." A pattern I was quietly recording. And while they thought they were tightening the screws, every move they made was leaving fingerprints, ones that would soon be impossible to wipe away. The moment lies go public, they stop being weapons and start becoming evidence. The first post appeared late at night in a local community group. Then another. By morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Someone, using their real name, had written that I was stalking families, photographing children, and pretending to own the neighborhood. The post was pinned, shared hundreds of times. A photo of my truck followed, license plate clearly visible, captioned with warnings to stay alert. It was Marla, she didn't hide it. My daughter texted me just after midnight. "Dad, are you in trouble? People are saying awful things about you." My chest felt hollow. This wasn't legal pressure anymore. This was character assassination. I called Rachel. She answered immediately. "I saw it," she said. "Do not respond." "Not one word. She's calling me a predator," I said. "People believe this." "I know," Rachel replied calmly. "And that's exactly why we let her talk. Defamation requires malice, false statements presented as fact, damages." Marla had just handed us all three on a public platform with timestamps, witnesses, and intent. Every comment calling for my arrest, every share, every message telling people to report sightings. It all went into a growing evidence folder. The fallout was immediate. My employer placed me on temporary leave. Paid but tense, optics, they said. A longtime coworker crossed the street when she saw me. At the grocery store, a man stared a little too long. Someone spray-painted a slur on my garage door. The responding officer took photos like he was filling out a routine form. I didn't sleep much. Then the intimidation escalated. My son called from work, voice shaking. A man in a suit had shown up asking questions about me, whether I'd ever been violent, unstable, unusual. The business card he left was from a private investigation firm. Rachel's reaction was immediate and sharp. "That's witness intimidation," she said, "and it's illegal." 2 days later, I received an audit notice, anonymous tip. 3 years of tax returns flagged. I forwarded it to Rachel without comment. "They're panicking," she said. "This is what panic looks like when it has money. Then something unexpected happened." A local real estate blog leaked the subdivision contracts. Headline: "Luxury homes built on disputed land." Buyers started calling me directly, crying, confused, terrified they'd lose everything. I told each of them the same thing. "I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to stop the people who lied to all of us." That night, Rachel called again. "A news station wants this story," she said. "Investigative, long form." I hesitated. Going public felt dangerous. But hiding hadn't protected me either. "Okay," I said. "Let's tell the truth." Because once the truth went on record, there would be no way for them to bury it, no matter how deep they tried to dig. The moment cameras turn on, lies don't just crack. They scramble, looking for somewhere to hide. The interview was scheduled for a gray afternoon. The reporter, Natalie Brooks, arrived with a cameraman and enough lighting gear to make my living room feel like a courtroom. She didn't rush me, didn't prompt drama, just asked me to explain slowly what happened to my grandfather's land, so I did. I talked about the inheritance, the years I stayed away but never stopped paying taxes, the drive up the mountain and the shock of seeing a neighborhood where pine trees used to stand. I showed her copies of the deed, the tax records, the survey maps. Paper doesn't raise its voice, but it doesn't lie either. Natalie's questions were precise. "When did you first learn the developer knew the land wasn't abandoned?" "When the threats started," I said. "People don't threaten you unless they're scared of something." The segment aired 3 nights later. Aerial footage of Summit Grove estates. Close-ups of my documents. Screenshots of the social media posts accusing me of crimes I'd never committed. Natalie's voiceover was calm, surgical. Records show the property owner paid taxes continuously. Emails suggest the developer moved forward anyway. My phone lit up before the broadcast even ended. Neighbors, old friends, former co-workers. Messages shifting from suspicion to shock to anger, mostly not at me. My employer called the next morning. Come back in, they said. We stand by you. But the message that mattered came from Rachel. They're melting down, she said. And they just made a fatal mistake. That same night, someone broke into my house. Nothing was stolen, no drawers rifled, just a single sheet of paper left on the kitchen table, drop it or lose everything. Printed, no signature. Police responded, took photos, dusted lightly, shrugged professionally. Hard to prove intent, they said. An hour later, my elderly neighbor knocked. She'd written down a license plate from a black SUV she saw parked outside earlier that day. I passed it to the officer. It was registered to the same investigation firm that had questioned my son. Rachel didn't raise her voice when I told her. She didn't need to. That's burglary, she said, and witness intimidation and obstruction. They're stacking felonies now. 2 days later, she called again. The title company flipped, she said. They're cooperating, emails, payment records, everything. I sat down hard. They knew the claim wouldn't hold, she continued. Approved it anyway. Took money to look the other direction. A settlement request came in that afternoon. Quiet, urgent, 8 figures, non-disclosure, walk away. Rachel didn't even forward it to me. We're past that, she said. Courts in 3 days. That night, I packed a bag and stayed with my daughter. Slept on her couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city hum outside. I wasn't afraid of losing anymore. I was afraid of how far desperate people were willing to go. And the next time we'd all be in the same room, there wouldn't be cameras. Just a judge, the truth, and nowhere left to run. Courtrooms don't feel dramatic when you walk into them. They feel quiet, like the calm before something irreversible happens. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse parking lot was already crowded. News vans lined the curb. Cables snaked across concrete steps. I kept my head down and followed Rachel inside, my heart thudding harder with every step. This wasn't a jury trial, just a judge, a stack of motions, and a truth that had been waiting far too long. Inside the courtroom, I saw them. Marla Halden sat at the defense table in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my truck. Her posture was perfect, chin lifted, hands folded. But they trembled slightly when she reached for her water glass. Beside her sat her husband, Grant Halden, the financial backer whose name had quietly surfaced in records Rachel had uncovered. Across from them, 3 attorneys shuffled papers like shields. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. Rachel rose first. She didn't shout, she didn't posture. She spoke like someone laying bricks, slow, precise, impossible to knock over. She walked the court through the timeline, the inheritance, the tax payments, the so-called adverse possession claim that was never approved by a court, the homes sold anyway, the threats, the harassment, the public smears. Then she introduced the email, an internal message sent months before construction began. In it, Grant explicitly acknowledged that I was still the legal owner and that the claim wouldn't survive scrutiny. He suggested moving fast, creating momentum, and letting legal chaos force a cheap settlement later. The courtroom shifted. The defense attorney objected. Too late. The judge had already read it. Did your clients know the property was not abandoned? The judge asked calmly. Silence. Rachel followed with evidence of the intimidation campaign, the false reports, the private investigator, the break-in, the audit complaint. Each piece alone might have been explained away. Together they formed a pattern so clear it was almost embarrassing. When the defense finally spoke, it sounded thin. Misunderstandings, complexity of property law, mistakes by third parties. No one took responsibility because responsibility would have meant admitting intent. The judge leaned forward. This court does not tolerate calculated fraud, she said, nor does it tolerate harassment used to suppress lawful claims. She denied the defense motion outright, ordered an immediate freeze on all sales, transfers, and financing tied to the development, issued a restraining order barring any contact with me or my family, and set an expedited trial date. Marla's composure cracked, just for a second, enough to notice. As we left the courtroom, homeowners filled the hallway. Some looked angry, others terrified. One woman grabbed my arm and asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are we going to lose our homes?" I looked at Rachel. She nodded once. "No," I said clearly, "you're not." The room went quiet. Because the fight had never been about taking anything from them. It was about making sure the people who lied couldn't keep anything at all. The most dangerous moment for liars isn't when they're accused. It's when they're forced to answer questions under oath. Depositions began a week later in a glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown. Snow dusted the rooftops outside, bright and indifferent. Inside, the air felt heavy, like everyone knew something was about to break. Grant Halden went first. He arrived with a new attorney, expensive, sharp, confident. The kind of confidence that assumes money still solves problems. Rachel started gently. Name, address, business affiliations. Grant answered smoothly, like he'd rehearsed this version of himself. Then Rachel slid the email across the table. "Do you recognize this?" "Yes." "Did you write it?" "Yes." "So you knew before construction began that the land was still legally owned." Grant hesitated. His attorney leaned forward. "Don't speculate. I'm not asking him to," Rachel said calmly. "I'm asking what he knew." Grant swallowed. "I knew someone was listed as owner. And you proceeded anyway," he tried to explain. "Title consultants, risk assessments, industry norms." Rachel didn't argue. She asked the same question again, slightly differently, then again, then again. By the sixth variation, Grant contradicted himself. By the 10th, sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. Next came the title company representative. She lasted 20 minutes. She admitted payments had been made outside standard billing. She admitted concerns were raised internally. She admitted approvals were rushed after pressure from the developer. Her voice shook when Rachel asked whether she feared losing her license. "Yes," she said quietly. By the end of the day, the room felt smaller. 2 days later, the developer's legal team requested a settlement conference. Urgent, private, confidential. Rachel's response was simple. No. That same evening, another escalation. My son called again. Someone had returned to his workplace asking follow-up questions. This time, Rachel didn't wait. She filed an emergency motion alleging witness intimidation, attaching call logs, photos, and the investigator's own card. The judge responded within hours. A warning order was issued. Any further contact would result in immediate sanctions. That night, Rachel finally told me the full scope of what she'd uncovered. This wasn't their first time. Similar developments, similar tactics, elderly owners, complicated titles, fast builds, quiet settlements. They rely on exhaustion, she said, on people giving up. I thought about my grandfather's ledgers, the careful handwriting, the assumption that truth mattered even if it took time. The next morning, headlines broke. Developer accused of patterned land fraud, multiple projects under investigation. Phones rang. Investors panicked. Lenders froze accounts. And suddenly the people who'd acted untouchable were scrambling to be heard. Rachel closed her folder and looked at me. "Now," she said, "we let the court finish it. Because once the pattern is exposed, the fall isn't slow. It's sudden, loud, and impossible to stop. When the truth finally surfaces, it doesn't whisper. It collapses everything built on the lie." Trial day arrived cold and bright. The courthouse steps were crowded again, not just with cameras, but with families. Homeowners from Summit Grove filled the hallway, sitting shoulder to shoulder, holding documents, hands clasped tight. Fear has a sound when it's quiet, and it was everywhere. Inside the courtroom, the mood was different this time. No casual confidence, no smirks. Marla Halden avoided eye contact entirely. Grant stared straight ahead like if he didn't move, maybe nothing would notice him. Rachel opened without theatrics. "This case is not about a technical misunderstanding," she said. "It's about intent." She laid it out piece by piece. The continuous tax payments, the lack of any court-approved possession ruling, the internal emails acknowledging ownership, the rush to sell homes anyway, the intimidation, the lies told publicly and privately to protect profit. Witnesses followed. The title company representative testified again, this time under oath in open court. The county inspector confirmed the false complaints. The private investigator invoked his right to remain silent when asked who hired him. Then Grant took the stand. Rachel dismantled him in less than an hour. Every explanation contradicted a document. Every denial collided with an email. When asked why construction continued after ownership concerns were raised, he paused too long. "We believed litigation pressure would resolve it," he said. The courtroom went still. Marla never testified. On advice of counsel, she invoked her rights and stayed silent. Silence in this case spoke loudly. By late afternoon, the judge ruled from the bench. The adverse possession claim was declared invalid. The development company was found liable for fraud, trespass, and intentional misconduct. Full ownership of the land and every structure on it was restored to me. Damages were awarded, legal fees assigned, and the matter was formally referred for criminal review. No applause, just stunned quiet. Outside, homeowners gathered around me again. The same question asked in different voices. "What happens to us now?" I took a breath. "You keep your homes," I said, "every one of you." Some cried, some laughed. One man sat down hard on the courthouse steps and put his head in his hands. The following weeks moved fast. The development company dissolved. Assets were frozen. Financing collapsed. Charges were filed. Plea negotiations followed. The people who thought they could outlast the truth ran out of road. But the hardest decision came after the victory. I could have sold the houses. The law allowed it. The numbers made sense. But standing there, watching families hold onto each other like survivors, the answer was already clear. This land had been my grandfather's legacy. And legacy isn't about what you take. It's about what you refuse to become, even when the law says you're allowed to. Winning in court feels powerful, but the real test comes when no one can stop you from doing the wrong thing. 2 weeks after the ruling, I stood at the entrance of Summit Grove, looking at the same stone sign that once made my stomach drop. Now it felt different, quieter, like the place was waiting to see who I really was. Legally, I owned everything. The land, the roads, the 82 houses. I could have evicted everyone, sold the properties individually, and walked away with more money than I'd ever see in my lifetime. People online even encouraged it. They bought stolen homes, strangers said, cash out. But every time I pictured that outcome, I saw the same faces. Parents unloading groceries, kids chalking driveways. The woman who cried in the hallway asking if her family would be homeless. That wasn't justice. That was just another kind of theft. So I called a meeting. Every household received a letter, not from lawyers, not from a court, but from me. We packed into the unfinished community center the developer never bothered to complete. Standing room only, nervous murmurs, suspicion. Hope tangled together, I told them everything. What happened, why I waited, how close this all came to collapsing. Then I told them my decision. I was transferring ownership of the entire neighborhood into a newly formed community land trust. Each family would receive full title to their home at the price they already paid. No added fees, no interest, no hidden clauses. Mortgage balances would be honored, payments redirected to the trust to maintain roads, utilities, and shared spaces. Silence, then someone started crying, then applause. Then people were standing, hugging, thanking me like I'd done something heroic. But it didn't feel heroic. It felt necessary. The trust also funded a scholarship in my grandfather's name for students studying engineering, environmental science, or land management. He believed land was responsibility, not leverage. This was the cleanest way I knew to honor that. I kept a small section of the property for myself. The part with the oldest trees, built a modest cabin, no gates, no guards. Just quiet mornings, pine air, and the knowledge that standing your ground doesn't always mean pushing forward. Months later, the story faded from headlines. The developers pleaded out. Licenses were revoked. Quiet consequences for loud arrogance. Life slowed down. Sometimes I walk the neighborhood in the evenings. Kids wave. Neighbors nod. No one looks afraid anymore. And every once in a while, I think about how close I came to signing that first quitclaim deed. How easy it would have been to walk away. I'm glad I didn't. Because the strongest kind of victory isn't taking everything you're owed. It's choosing what kind of person you'll be after the fight is over. Most stories end with a verdict, but the real ending is what you do when no one's watching anymore. Life didn't turn cinematic after everything wrapped up. There were no victory laps, no sudden fame, no feeling of being untouchable. What I got instead was quiet, the good kind, the kind that lets you hear your own thoughts again. The community trust stabilized faster than anyone expected. Roads got maintained, bills got paid. Neighbors stopped worrying about paperwork and started worrying about normal things. School schedules, leaky faucets, whose turn it was to host barbecues. Watching that shift felt better than any settlement number ever could. The scholarship launched the following fall. The first recipient was a sophomore studying environmental engineering. She wrote me a thank you letter saying she planned to work in land conservation someday. I read it twice and then stuck it in a drawer with my grandfather's old notes. It felt like closing a circle he'd started decades earlier. As for me, I kept my routine simple. Work during the week, cabin on the weekends. Coffee on the porch in the mornings, watching fog lift off the trees that were never cut down. Some mornings I still expect a phone call telling me it was all a mistake, but those calls never come. Every once in a while, someone asks if I regret not selling everything and walking away richer. I always give the same answer. Money solves problems. It doesn't fix wrongs. What fixed this was refusing to quit when quitting would have been easier. Refusing to let fear decide for me. Refusing to become the kind of person I was fighting against. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that systems don't break because people are evil. They break because good people assume someone else will step in. Sometimes, that someone else has to be you. And sometimes, all it takes to stop something corrupt is patience, paperwork, and the stubborn refusal to disappear. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt powerless against a system that assumed you'd back down, I hope it reminded you of something important. Standing your ground doesn't require being loud. It just requires not leaving. Because the moment you refuse to walk away is often the moment everything starts to change. Before you go, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want more real-world cases where ordinary people outthink powerful systems, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next. Make sure to like the video and comment your thoughts below. I read them all, and I'd love to know what stood out to you most.